What's up, it's ENDYMION, and there's been quite a few stories lately that are painting a rather bleak picture for the gaming industry. As investments fall and games are not selling as well as they used to, what's happening? From Microsoft to another Sweet Baby bloodbath, a future Sweet Baby release dooming to repeat the cycle, and having kids is a disability now. It's a lot, so let's start. Firstly, from that Park Place, another round of layoffs hits Xbox and Microsoft as company fully embraces woke agenda. Yet again, Microsoft is letting people go, and it's no small amount. The number of people being let go is unknown at this point, but this does add to the already 1,900 people who were laid off earlier this year from Microsoft already. Mind you, there's approximately 22,000 people working at Microsoft solely on Xbox as a brand, so that's no small amount. So this just adds more doom to the already gloom that Microsoft is dealing with on a constant basis. Many of the people affected have been going to social media and sites like LinkedIn to confirm the news. There's too many of these individuals to recount them all, but one person who got let go was this user on Twitter called Jessica Birdie. Tom Warren, who reports on gaming industry stuff, said this: "More Xbox layoffs happening this week. Microsoft laid off Jessie while she was on vacation." Yeah, Microsoft obviously doesn't care, and that Jessica person's vacation is probably ruined now. Imagine finally getting time off work and Microsoft emails you to say, "So big news, you've been promoted to customer, that is, you're fired, see you later." Just big yikes all around. Jessica has also been revealed to be someone that pushes for identity politics within the games industry. But it looks like even people who are championing diversity are getting dumped by these companies anyway. Like I said, not the first time Microsoft has done layoffs this year, but Phil Spencer did have things to say about it. He said, and I quote, "The layoffs are part of a strategy and an execution plan with a sustainable cost structure that will support the whole of our growing business. Together, we've set priorities, identified areas of overlap, and ensured that we are all aligned on the best opportunities for growth. As part of this process, we have made the painful decision to reduce the size of our gaming workforce by approximately 1,900 roles out of the 22,000 people on our team." To stop the quote here for a second, another interview was pulled in a part of this, which was Phil Spencer speaking back in March of this year, where he details why exactly layoffs like these keep happening within the games industry. So now let's switch to what Spencer said about that, and I quote again. "But I'll say the thing that has me most concerned for the industry is the lack of growth. When you have an industry that is projected to be smaller next year in terms of players and dollars, and you get a lot of publicly traded companies that are in the industry that have to show their investors growth, because why does somebody own a share of someone's stock if it's not going to grow? The size of the business that then gets scrutinized is the cost side. Because if you're not going to grow the revenue side, then the cost side becomes challenged. We're a business. I've said over and over, I don't get any luxury of not having to run a profitable growing business inside of Microsoft. And we are that today. I reflect on friends of mine in the industry that have been displaced and lost their jobs, and how just I don't want this industry to be a place where people can't, with confidence, build a career. So that's why I keep pivoting back to, how does this industry get back to growth? But to your question, but for us at Xbox or any of our teams that are out there, it is really an outcome of an industry that's not growing. It can grow and it will grow again, but you see this time right now and the implications have human impact. And we should all reflect on that and think about it. I will say every decision we make today and tomorrow is for the better of Xbox. I know sometimes things get weaponized, that there's some evil in the background that's making us do things. Phil hates exclusives, and that's why we're like PlayStation and Switch now. Every decision we make is to make Xbox stronger in the long run. It doesn't mean everyone's going to agree with every decision we make, but it is fundamental for how we make decisions." End quote. Phil Spencer has been criticized, and rightfully so, for years, as it's obvious his direction for Xbox and how he's operating this branch of Microsoft is just not paying off. It doesn't help that under Phil Spencer's wing that other moronic initiatives have taken root at the company as well. One of these, for example, is Gaming for Everyone Product Inclusion Framework, which is not a captivating name at all, but it's pretty much a massive initiative at Microsoft to enforce identity politics into every game they make going forward. By the way, this initiative has been in effect at Microsoft since 2019. And if you want to look at the fruits of the labor, well, just look at what Microsoft has released in the past 2 to 3 years. Almost everything has either failed, like Hellblade 2, or completely shuttered companies down, even if they're good, like Hi-Fi Rush. Redfall was also born out of this framework, but look what happened to Arcane Austin. They don't exist anymore. Microsoft also now owns Activision Blizzard, but we also know that according to reports that Activision has a DEI or Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion officer on every project within that company from its inception. You only need to look at articles like this one from HRDrive.com back in May 2023, where Microsoft confirms that they are going full in on DEI. Even their chief diversity officer, whose name is Kristen Hines, confirmed this, where she said, "In our new report of representation data, we're also sharing our hiring and retention data broken down by gender, race, and ethnicity. This is the first time we're sharing this data and will therefore serve as our baseline or starting point moving forward." This all sounds well and good at first glance, but you have to ask yourself, what does this have to do with video games and the quality of these products? Not much really, to be honest with you. These companies are far more interested in checking boxes to fulfill quotas so they look good on a survey or presentation. But the sad reality is that these companies are not hiring people based on their actual talents or experience, and it shows clearly. It's not a good look that Microsoft has had arguably tons of misfires in the past few years. And it's no surprise that due to these hiring practices, more people are getting into game development, but it's not translating into actual good products that people want to buy. Besides all the examples given here, we have another casualty of a consulting group that you are definitely knowing the name of. This brings us to Sweet Baby Inc. You already know what they're all about, so I'll save my breath, but I've been saying for a while now that aligning yourself with this consulting group is akin to financial self-deletion at this point. Here's this article from PC Gamer which states that after just 3 months since its release, Tales of Kanzara Zhao's development studio is faced with layoffs, they said via Twitter. Unfortunately, Surgeon Studios has joined the growing number of game studios impacted by layoffs this year, with just over a dozen people affected. It's a difficult time in the games industry, but we remain incredibly proud of our team's work on Zhao and of the praise it has received from critics and players alike. Our focus now is on supporting those affected, continuing our work on Zhao, and looking to the future with our next creative projects. One user who's tone deaf in the comments responded to this by saying, "Gamers continue to disappoint me, no one gives these small games a chance. It's always Call of Duty, FIFA, and Madden topping charts, shameful, but this just isn't the case at all. Indie games are flourishing these days like never before." I mean, I'm currently playing stuff like V Rising myself, which is an indie game, and I'm enjoying it thoroughly. This is a non-argument. The truth is simply that people aren't supporting games like Zhao because it was worked on by Sweet Baby Inc. That's all it really is. Even if Zhao is a good game or not, the principle of not supporting something which is attached to a company that very evidently hates the player base is reason alone to not support it. Zhao could be a 10 out of 10 game, it wouldn't matter, because by supporting it, Sweet Baby would be emboldened to keep making things. These sorts of companies and talking heads have said for years that if you don't like their politics, don't buy their products. We've heard that in comics as well too. They have become so arrogant that they believe that players will buy their games anyways, even if they're made by woke leftist individuals. So now, as we can see, Gamergate 2 is having an effect. Unfortunately, it is costing the jobs of people who have worked on these games. Some might say in a sense it's players' fault for this, but I disagree. Ultimately, it's the people at the top who are at fault, the Kim Belayers of Sweet Baby Inc. especially. They are so headstrong on dismantling and destroying these companies to push agendas that the only realistic approach that players have is to not buy their products. There simply is not any other way that can conceivably stop this rot from spreading. We can talk about it all day, say that it sucks, but ultimately if people spend their money, it will allow these things to continue to happen in the future. And I think this story perfectly aligns with the first part of this video about Microsoft and all of that. Phil Spencer even said in that interview that the game industry is not growing like it used to. Remember, he said that next year is projected to make the industry smaller than it is this year. But why is that? Why isn't anyone buying up these games like they used to? It's simple. The cancerous rot that is diversity, equity, and inclusion has spread so far that almost everything made in the Western Hemisphere when it comes to game development, they're all infected at this point to varying degrees. I know for me anyway, whenever I see a new shiny Western-made game get announced, I immediately approach it with a sense of cynicism instead of hype or excitement. Because part of me wants to get excited. I mean, it is a new game, but the critical part of my brain then just pulls me back and starts laying out the facts for me. And it's then that I realize far too often that a lot of these Western-made games, pretty much, not all of them mind you, but most, are aligned with woke identity politics and are just pushing their agendas in unison. And really, if we want to move past this era of gaming, you have to stop feeding the beast or it will continue to grow. And sadly, that's a big reason as to why the game industry is not growing as much either this year or going into the next one. Players are jaded, tired, and fed up with the slop that keeps getting created. Believe me when I tell you how disappointed and sad I was when I played Spiderman 2 and realized that it was ruining Peter Parker to make way for Miles Morales to take over. It felt like I was playing something that made sense to me, like the web slinging was there, fighting criminals and all of that, but the characters were about as alien to me as the symbiote itself. I didn't recognize this Peter Parker. And realizing after playing it that there was this company called Sweet Baby Inc. and then looking into it, and then we all collectively as a community started to see more games that this company had worked on, and then the pieces just started to align. Patterns were being noticed, and suddenly this uneasy feeling as to why there are so many AAA Western games that are bad these days, it just all started to make sense. They were all being deliberately sabotaged by these activists, and we've reached the part of this current meta where everyone, even normies, have become aware of this. These companies, they cannot fool us anymore. We're so accustomed to the patterns, the talking points, and agenda that if we even hear or feel a small bit of that activism, we are all immediately out. And I think it's because of channels like mine and others speaking on these things, not to mention Brutus Rambo with his Sweet Baby Detective plugin and his websites that are chronicling DEI efforts too. We're reaching a point where the customer is far more informed than any other time in gaming history. I remember when The Verge tried to spin the story that Gamergate 2 was smaller and sadder this time around, but we knew it was just projection on their part. If anything, by the existence of these failures in the industry, Gamergate 2 is anything but informed or small. It has become the new normal, and these activist brain-rotted developers are mortified of how quickly this movement has grown. The fact that people like Asmongold, for example, have spoken at lengths about these very things is proof alone that Gamergate 2 and the pushback against identity politics has absolutely entered the mainstream. People are more fed up than ever, and we don't want to embrace these games made by people who evidently hate us because we don't agree with them. As Grum stated once, just don't buy their games for 2 years and then they'll be forced to make what you want again, and he's right. Obviously, we're still early on in this movement, but it's clear that the players who have been told time and again that they have no power in changing anything actually have all the power and can change things pretty regularly by simply doing nothing at all. It's like the easiest movement to be a part of because you literally don't need to do anything. Just let these trailers for these games come out. Let them run their hit piece articles and you can just look at it, laugh, and then go back to playing some game from 5 to 7 years ago again. Is it any surprise that all the best-selling games of this year have all pretty much abandoned pushing politics and just giving people good content instead? The only outlier here technically is Helldivers 2, which started originally as being a based product. But unfortunately, as time went on, we realized that they too are now riddled with agenda pushers, and what happened in response? Alright, they lost 90% of their player base in 5 months. Yeah, that sounds about right. The reason why the game industry isn't growing is simple, and it is of course corporate greed and CEOs wanting everything to be monetized, and players are more and more rejecting these design practices. But the other side of the coin is that the industry is just not giving players what they want anymore. You saw it with Suicide Squad. Why force a single-player story-driven dev to make an always online live service game? Clearly, that didn't work out. Then they'll tell you that nobody buys games anymore when Stellar Blade did well, Pal World, not to mention plenty of indies like V Rising and more too. Like I said, it's not that people don't want to buy new games, it's just that players can't really be fooled anymore. And is it honestly worth trying to pull the wool over players' eyes when you know full well that eventually it will blow up in your face and backfire like it did for Helldivers? I'm sick of the agenda, as you all are too, but fellas, I gotta say, you are winning, and I'm proud of all of you. And also don't forget that this news cycle will repeat soon, since Flintlock: The Siege of Dawn will be out soon enough as well. Which is like Zao and Suicide Squad, also a Sweet Baby product, and need I remind you, the gods in that game are apparently allegories for colonialism. So Flintlock is a game where you play a diverse woman of color slaying white guys and smashing colonialism in the name of feminism. I'm sure it will sell millions of copies, right? Well, we'll see soon enough. Now let's switch gears to this other story that recently went viral, which is also incredibly stupid. So Alana Pierce is a YouTuber who used to work for IGN. She now also works at Sony Santa Monica Studios. Yeah, the people behind the God of War games. Anyways, she recently had a video go viral for all the wrong reasons where she stated that having children should be considered a disability. I wish I wasn't kidding. Here's the part of that video that everyone is talking about in case you haven't seen it yet.
Spell out where accessibility is concerned. People who are disabled, I felt myself doing it, I'm going to do it, is another tangent. There are also multiple kinds of disabilities, especially where gaming is concerned. There are long-term disabilities, there are situational disabilities, there are temporary disabilities. It counts as a disability where a video game like Elden Ring is concerned if you have a kid. You have a 2-year-old, you're trying to play Elden Ring, you can't pause. It is a situational disability that you have, where the game not having the option for you to be able to pause, for example, is a hindrance for your particular disability, a situational disability.
So apparently wanting to play a game like Elden Ring while having a child is now considered a disability. Well, one user decided to white knight for Alana Pierce here and post 2 excerpts from the Microsoft Inclusion Design document, which apparently proves Alana right. Some examples given in this little chart is that having laryngitis, for example, is a temporary disability, and being a new parent is a situational disability. What we're seeing here, friends, is corporations going out of their way to find any way imaginable to self-victimize themselves. And what these companies don't realize is that by allowing this sort of thinking to become normalized, all they're doing is emboldening future generations to be raised in more victimhood mindsets. None of this is okay, by the way, and being a parent is not a disability. As for Elden Ring not having a pause menu, it does technically. Is it easy to find? Not really. I do agree that these sorts of games should have pause menus. Obviously, they should only be accessible if you play the game offline and not online, of course. But the point being is that what Alana is pushing here is just weird liberal gobbledygook. A child running past your TV while you're fighting a boss in Elden Ring, that's not a disability. This would be like saying some kid playing Fortnite having his mom yell at him that dinner is ready is somehow a disability because he has to eat but he's playing so he can't concentrate fully. These are not disabilities of any kind, they are just things that happen in life that you just gotta deal with. If your kid is doing jumping jacks in front of your TV or something while you play Elden Ring, get your partner to help with the kid. Tell your kid to calm down, sit them down beside you, or maybe only play Elden Ring when the kid is asleep. But again, having a child is not a disability, but it doesn't surprise me that someone who evidently lives in a liberal leftist echo chamber would think this way. I can only imagine all the nonsensical terms these individuals come up with to justify their ways of living. Oh, why don't you have kids? Well, I already have a soft-spoken voice by just existing, which is technically a permanent disability, therefore I am now on the spectrum. Also, my wrist hurts from giving too many you-know-whats in college, so because of that my wrist hurt when I work too much, so naturally I work less and I collect disability checks. Also, I justify not having children because that will somehow make me more disabled than I already am. I am such a victim, aren't I? It's just so lame, dude. It's like people who are obese who have been trying for years now to get being fat included into the LGBT flag stuff. Being fat isn't an identity, it is also not a disability. You can't be disabled by something that you inflicted upon yourself like being fat. If you get hit by a car and it paralyzes you, yes, you are now disabled. If you're involved in some freak accident and lose your arm, yeah, disability makes sense too. But just because you can't control how many cheeses you put into your mouth and can't start your day without your 2 liters of slushy cola does not make you disabled. It just means that you're lazy, lack conviction and self-control, and you need to stop filling yourself with literal pure sugar on a daily basis. You are not disabled. Sure, you might take longer to move around, but whose fault is that? It's not Donald Trump, I'll tell you that. It's no one's fault or responsibility to change how society operates because you're a self-indulgent narcissist who believes they're a victim every day of their lives. And what Alana says here is just stupid, but of course the Sims will still protect her. Apparently this is what she is referring to, again also from that Microsoft inclusion thing, and here's what it says. Situational disability is characterized by a temporary restriction or difficulty in performing tasks or interacting with environments and objects. This type of disability is not tied to a person's physical or mental condition, but rather to the circumstances they find themselves in. Definition: it refers to the experience of disability that arises solely from the situation rather than an inherent or long-term physical, mental, or emotional impairment. Examples and scenarios include a loud environment making it difficult to hear, impairing communication, a well-lit room causing glare on a screen, impairing vision, or a temporary injury making it challenging to navigate spaces, affecting mobility. Cool, but these are not disabilities. These are things you can fix almost immediately. Having glare on your TV screen is not a visual disability. Having cataracts or terrible natural vision where you're almost blind is instead. Just close the blinds, turn off the lights, or block the light source. And saying loud music is a disability is stupid too. You entered the avenue that is loud music by your own free will. You are not temporarily disabled by the existence of loud music somehow. You are just a narcissistic idiot who needs to find any way they can to make themselves seem like they are unique or important. So I guess anybody watching this with kids, I have some news for you. Surprise! You're all disabled now. Feel free to park in the disabled handicap spot wherever you go, by the way. If anyone questions it, just look them in the eyes and say, I'm a parent, therefore I am now disabled. I guess I'm disabled too, because I own 2 little dogs. They like to run all over me when I play video games or edit. They're beside me right now as I record this audio too. So if one of my dogs decides to jump on my chest and lick my face randomly, am I disabled now as well? This is amazing. I guess everyone who is watching or listening to this video right now is disabled. Is this how it feels to be a part of a special group of people? Because this is amazing. So remember, you can just go collect disability checks because you are all disabled after all to varying degrees. You don't like eating cabbage? You might be vegetable disabled. You can't eat dairy? It's time to accept that your stomach might actually also be disabled. I guess we all learned something about ourselves today, didn't we? We are all in fact just disabled in our own ways. And if you have glare on your TV while your kid runs by like a schizophrenic and your dog is barking which impairs your hearing, and your knee cracks because you're pushing over 30 years old, you are now multi-layered disabled yourself. The pandering is just off the charts, fellas. It's incredible to live in this era so that we can all reasonably witness just how stupid people are these days. Oh yeah, also Alana Pierce came out as pansexual recently, which means she is attracted to anyone regardless of what they identify as. Isn't that just bisexual, you say? Well, stop being a bigot, alright? She's pansexual now. Did she publicly state she's pansexual because it gives her added job security and virtue signaling to shield her from criticism and protect her job? Absolutely. Probably. But please, don't harass Alana, okay? She is, after all, a pan-disabled woman. After all, yesterday she had to brush her teeth, which is honestly ableist of her against people who don't have teeth. She should probably apologize about that too. Also, she likely slept in her own bed, which is technically anti-homelessness, which is also a big no-no. The only solution for Alana Pierce is to identify as something else. Maybe she can take a DNA test, and if it comes back even 1% native, she could technically use that to identify as native herself, and now she has double the protection against any opinion. Just a thought. Remember fellas, don't hate the player, hate the game. Also, if anyone leaves a mean comment on this video, you're going to jail. Because I now identify as a lesbian, because as a man who's into women, that means I can do that. I'm also interspecies disabled because I own dogs. So watch what you say in the comments. You're all treading on very thin ice here. But in serious talk, this is what happens when you enable people to come up with these stupid monikers and made up problems. You're just enabling narcissists to become even worse versions of themselves by normalizing these sorts of things. Now take this example, multiply it by God knows how many times in the game industry, and you wonder why everything is failing and they're just producing garbage in the West. Maybe if we hired people based on merit and not this other nonsense, these games would be selling and layoffs wouldn't be happening. But that's what this interspecies disabled lesbian thinks. What do you think about all of this? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, subscribe, share, and like this video. Thanks to my patrons for supporting this proud lesbian man, and have a wonderful day. Take care of yourselves, tell me what you're disabled with in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one.